Well, hello everybody. Pastor Randy here. Welcome to Making It Simple. It's so great to be with you. I enjoy these times together. I feel like, I want to create an atmosphere to where while we may be miles apart, states apart, nations apart. I don't know how far we go, but I want it to feel like we're just sitting at the table having a conversation about important things. We've been talking about the word power for quite some time. We've been talking about how our thinking, how our thought life is so impacted by that word and what controls it and who. It goes back to our beginning when we started looking at Philippians chapter 4 and verse 6 by saying, be careful for nothing. But that word translated also is really speaking about stop worrying about everything. Over the last several lessons, we've looked at verse 8, where Paul has said, finally, here's where your thoughts need to gravitate toward. I've taught you, I've shown you the importance of why worry is not beneficial, why worry doesn't help you at all. And so think about the things that are true. Think about the things that are honest and just and pure. Things that are lovely. Things that have a good report. We've looked at that extensively. And why each word's important. Why each part of this puzzle, as it begins to come together, it creates a beautiful picture. Because it creates clear thoughts. It creates the road to victory. And that's kind of what I want to talk about today. In the spirit of competition, okay, we're in the end of the season of football, if you're a football fan. All the teams have competed through the, 16, 17 weeks, whatever they've been playing, and they're down now to just the last 4 teams. They'll all play this weekend coming up and be eliminated down to 2, and they'll move on to the Super Bowl. Now, again, it's sports, it's entertainment, it's this, it's that, it's whatever. So this is not about fandom and who likes what and who likes who. The spirit of competition, we've all been a part of that in our lives, whether it's been a foot race, spelling bee, or competition for someone's attention. We've all been in some level of that in our lives. In the spirit of competition, we hear the words victory and defeat. But what we have to grasp is that in our life, victory or defeat, one of them are going to come. Now, I realize that we've seen that kind of change over the last many years where we've seen the development of participation awards and trophies. But friends, that's not real. It's not. There's a winner, there's a loser. Loser does not mean the quality of that person or the efforts that were there. It's just simply you didn't get across the finish line first. That's okay. Try harder next time. It gives you incentive. You're not going to win every time. Even on these game shows, again, the reality of them or not, someone's got a winning streak for X amount of weeks. Ultimately, someone dethrones them because they answered the question quicker. The same way with sports competition. Someone gets to the end zone first. Someone gets the knockout punch first. That's reality. Yes, we can applaud the person's effort for trying. But to say that everybody wins, that's not true. It's just not. In the concept of understanding victory and defeat, it absolutely 100% hinges on who and what controls our thoughts. We've talked about that a lot over the last several days as we've looked at true and honest and all those different things. What is controlling what's spinning the wheels in here? Who is controlling? What are we allowing? Who are we allowing to have ownership of that responsibility? Because it should be no one No one but God. No one. What we understand is when we sublease that responsibility or that power or that enormous responsibility to anyone else but the Lord himself and what he allows us to see and do, oftentimes we get a mess. And we're seeing one now at epic proportions. Paul says, think on these things. The word think there is an action word. It is not just a mere passing by of thoughts. It is actually dwelling upon, studying on, if you will, allowing these things to dwell. When we stay in a hotel room for a night, we're passing through. We don't live there. When we come into our home that we have the key to, we have the deed to, or at least we in the bank, that's our house. We live there. That's where we get our mail. That's where we get bills. That's where we live. What thoughts pass through? We can have passing thoughts. We all have those. We all have the daydream or the fanciful wish or this. We all have that. But what we allow to dwell there, to spin there, to just sit there and fester and boil and grow, that's important because that will control the outcome. And it will either be victory or defeat. There is no participation award. There is no gold sticker. There is none of that. We're not talking about the effort made. Effort made is fine. There's nothing wrong with effort. Trying is a plus. That's all in. But when it pertains to the result, when it pertains to the end of the game, there's a winner, there's a loser. Paul says, think on these things. And he's talking about this journey that we call life. How do we get there? How does that race end well? He says, think on things that are true. Well, that's a wonderful beginning because we struggle with the truth in the world today. We don't know what's real anymore because everything has been created by smoke and mirrors today. Everything has a question mark behind it. Is that real? Did that really happen? It can be very confusing. That is until we begin to see things through the eyes of Christ. And if we take the word true and go back to understand who is the truth, that's Jesus. I am the truth. Understanding that and understanding our relationship with that is key to understanding what is true. I can think on those things because I'm allowing the Lord to direct my thoughts. In other words, I can see things through the eyes of Christ. So again, that's not arrogance. That's not pride. That's not I'm smarter or better than you. I have great discernment through the eyes of Christ of what I say no to and what I agree to. So we've seen the truth. And then we go through, as we went through yesterday, from lovely to a good report. And then the end of this verse. Now one would think, okay, how could one verse last for days on end teaching or weeks on end, whatever the case? This is not about being slow. It's not about being repetitive. But friends, when we begin to truly look at a passage, every word, sometimes even the and or the but, has an impact. And this verse is no different. So we get through the entirety of the verse. Finally, brethren, think on all this different stuff. Then we get to where it divides. And after the word good report, he says, think on that. Here's the things that I want you to think on. Whatever things are true and on so on and on. So it gets down to a good report. And then we find the word if. If. Now, the word if, again, is a pause. It's a stop. It is a thought in and of itself because it requires us to stop and think. If there be any virtue. If there be any virtue whatsoever, if there be any praise, and think on these things. If causes us to stop. If is a part of the clause, if and then. God oftentimes wrote that and had that written throughout the Old Testament. If you'll do this, I'll do that. If there be any virtue. I want us to focus on that for just a few minutes in our time together today. As we look at the finality of this lesson on power, and in particular the power of Christ-controlled thinking, as we begin to wind this up, it's absolutely vital. It's essential. It is so important that we understand that word, if. Because when we go back and look at the entirety of how this starts, again, stop worrying about everything, but come to the Lord through prayer. Talk to Him. That's really what He's talking about. That's what it really comes down to. Talk to me. I've been dealing with a business issue for the last, 2 months. And I've tried diligently, calmly, professionally, and hopefully in a Christ-like manner. Although humanity steps in, our frustrations get the best of us. But I've been dealing with a business matter for the last several months with a young man that's supposed to be taking care of a project that he's been paid to do. Talking to him has been very difficult because there's no response. Talking to him seems to be like talking to the wall. You seem to be getting nowhere. God is saying, just talk to me. And that's what I've tried to get across to this young man. Just talk to me. Just respond. Just communicate. And we can get through anything. And I think that's the case with most issues in life. When communication shut down, then we begin to have problems. Paul here says, if there's any virtue, if there's any praise, think on that. The word virtue, it means morally good. It is a desirable action or a useful quality. That's the definition of that word. Now, the word praise means approval. It means to have gratitude toward something or someone. So how did those two things conclude that message about truth and honesty and purity and lovely and all those? How does the words virtue and praise, how do they bring that to a conclusion? And how do these two things, virtue and praise, how do they affect our thought life? It comes back to this question. Are we seeking victory? Are we truly, earnestly seeking victory? Do we keep the end zone in our sight? Is that our goal? Is that where we're headed? The finish line, home plate, whatever we want to look at, however we want to desire that. I guess sports analogies are just easy to use. The finished, completed meal. You see the mess all over the counter, but you can envision everything being plated and served to your family. You're the artist, and you don't see the blank canvas. You see the Picasso. You see the Rembrandt. You see that finished project. You're the carpenter. You don't see an empty lot. You see a new house. What is the end game here? What do we see? Are we seeking victory? Or do we embrace defeat without even making an effort? If there's any virtue, if there's anything desirable here at all, if there's any praise, if there's something to get excited about, think on that. Am I seeking that? Am I looking for victory? Or have I just given up? Our thoughts determine the victory or the defeat. And our thoughts are controlled by something or someone. So the importance of who that is or what that is immense. Immense, because our thoughts and who or what controls them are absolutely 100% tied to winning and losing. I've given you the illustrations about, the little league team that's been down 30-0, and the little kid says, "We ain't even got up to bat yet, so I ain't giving up." It is our perception. It is our thought. You've won or lost before you ever get started. That is not to say that absolute victory will be obtained every time, in the sense of the hand being raised, you're the first one to break the yellow tape. No, it is about, if I walk across where that area is the finish, then I won. I might not have got the winner's prize. I might not have got the award or the big check, but I won because I did it. It's all about what controls our thoughts. Because if we see it from the other side of that, "Oh, I'm a loser, I'm no good," then that's where you'll stay. What is controlling? What is controlling? Who is controlling your thoughts? Dwight Pentecost, former pastor of Old Evangelist, he said this. He said, "The greatest area of struggle in a believer's life is not in the area of action, but in the area of thought." I can absolutely attest to you that is 100% true. Because we can easily say no to an action. I'm not going to do it. I don't want to do it, or I don't like that, or whatever. We can say no based on visual, based on taste, based on smell, based on whatever. But our thought life, we wrestle with. We do. That's just real. But why? It's what we allow to affect our thoughts. What do we put in? What do we allow to stay in? Again, we get back to the word dwell. What do we allow to live there? Who do we allow to be in the driver's seat? It's unbelievably important, my friends. Unbelievably important. If we are seeking true victory, and I believe this, if we're seeking true freedom in this life, and I am not talking about what the government says you can or can't have. I'm not talking about worldly nonsense. I'm talking about right here within the confines of this tent, as the Apostle Paul would say, within the confines of this creation that stands before you, whether it's 5 foot or 6 foot or 10 foot or whatever you may be. If we are seeking true victory, true freedom, then Christ-controlled thinking is a must. It's an absolute must. Because if we don't have Him in the driver's seat, if we don't have our right heart relationship in place with Him to allow the control of our thinking. Now, again, we get our hackles up about the word control. I don't want anybody to tell me what to do. That should only apply to those who have harmful intent. That should only apply to those who do not have your best interest at heart, or who want the control over you for nefarious reasons for themselves. That is never Jesus. Jesus is saying, "I am the way, the truth, the life." What does that say? He's saying, I'm telling you everything you need. I'm giving you the example of how to do it, and I'm showing you how to get there. We can trust in that, and we can allow Him the ownership of our thought life. Because the minute we drift off that path, we know what happens. When we get off of any pathway, we get lost. When we get off the road, we get lost, or we go in the ditch, and maybe it's caused harm to ourselves, our vehicle, whatever. That's the illustration of life. Understanding the power that is within the position of what holds the power over the thoughts and that goes on in our lives is vital to winning and losing this journey we call life. Again, we've looked at the power of true and honest and just and purity and love and good report. These create a powerful witness. These create a powerful testimony. But if we look at this and consider and understand the power of virtue and praise, it changes everything. It goes back to that one little word, if. If there be virtue, if there be praise, think on these things. So the question is, as we look at the things going on in our lives, and I'm talking about directly, personally involving you, not your neighbor, not what's on CNN or any other a horrible place for truth because it doesn't exist there. Is there anything that you can find virtue in? Again, let me go back here for just a second. I want to tell you that is morally good, that is desirable, that is useful. Are the things in your life, do they fall into that category? Are the things that are affecting your thoughts, do they fall into that category? Does anything have praise? Does it have great approval by the Lord? Is it something you can have gratitude for? I am so thankful. I am so grateful. Paul says if those things are there, then they will be attached to things that are true. They will be attached to things that are honest and pure and lovely and all that stuff. There's only one place that all of that can be housed at once, and that's in the person of Christ. So the real question is he a part of your life, and is he allowed to have say? Because when we get to that place, then it changes everything. Virtue, again, is good, desirable, and useful. When we think of victory, and I'm going to finish on this today, and we'll pick back up on it tomorrow, Lord willing. When we think of victory, we think of the big celebration. We think of the hand raised and the cheers and the crowd going wild and the ticker tape coming down and championship belts and, all this stuff, the accolades, or even just the joy in our heart. Man, I did it. Yes. I think of walking across the stage as a kid, getting that high school diploma. That was a victory because that was a hard road. It didn't come easy. There was a lot of hard study, a lot of everything, putting up with a lot of nonsense growing up. To know that those 12 years were completed, that was a pretty great victory. It was satisfactory. To later in life walk across the stage as I'd finished my studies, even further back than that, when I walked across the platform at the Criminal Justice Academy and received my certificate that I had completed my law enforcement training. That was a proud moment. That was a victory. That was satisfactory. That was hard. That was a lot of work. Later, when I would obtain my master's degree, my doctorate degree, and I don't say those things to brag at all, those were victories because there was a lot of hard work. It was an accolade, not just for a great title or for people to look at you differently, but to say, I did it. God helped me to have the ability to do that. There's satisfaction. So it's not hard to see how victory and virtue can change us. When we obtain the truth, when we see the things that are pure and honest, and we allow the Lord the victory over our lives, the victory over death, hell, and the grave, to really have an impact in our life, to say, hey, I've got one in charge now that's not me, one that's a way better driver, and one that actually knows where they're going, it changes our outlook about everything. About everything. If there be, what a beautiful statement. And that's what we're going to end on today. If there be. I want you to examine things around you today and think about that question. Is there anything here of virtue? And I'm not talking about the guy or the gal looking back at you in the mirror. You may find faults in that person. I know every time I look in the mirror, I find faults, whether it's another wrinkle, maybe not any gray hairs, but whatever there may be that I may not be satisfied with this guy, I'm sure that you could find the same thing with your guy or your girl. But when we begin to think on these things and look at what's controlling what's going on in here, if there's any virtue, if there's any praise, if it's true and honest and pure, give him praise. Give him thanks that he's got you on a better path. And victory is yours. God bless you. I'll see you tomorrow. We'll pick back up on this powerful lesson of victory and defeat and how that's looked at through this beautiful scripture and why it means so much to us in our days ahead. God bless you. I'll see you tomorrow.